All right, so welcome everybody to our Lunch and Learn webinar. Everyone should be muted as you join the webinar, and I'm just asking to stay on mute until the end of the presentation, and then we can open it up for questions if you'd like. This session is being recorded, and the link to the recording and the slide deck will be provided to everyone who signed up for the webinar probably early next week. Okay, so there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and a chat. And I'll be keeping an eye on those for the presenters, but go ahead and type in any questions or comments as you think of them. There was a lot of interest in today's webinar, which warms my heart. And I'm really excited to hear from Merrell Brothers. Again, I'm on their Biosolids innovations. I got to check out the Merrell Brothers facility in Kokomo, Indiana, when I went to the Midwest Biosolids Association's first annual conference there at Purdue. And Terry Merrell, who I'll introduce in a moment, and his brother Ted, they built this great company. It's an inventor's paradise, if you ask me. And I'm excited for you to hear about just some of the stuff that they're working on to improve the fate of biosolids, soils, and the planet. So presenting today, we have Terry Merrell. He's the co-owner and co-chief executive officer of Merrell Brothers. The company's been in business for 40 years. That is a major accomplishment. Educated at Northwestern, he leads the company's research and development into new technology and has a patent or two, including this double drum dryer you're going to hear about. He's going to be joined by Ryan Zeck, who is Merrell's chief technology officer. He has a BS in agribusiness from Purdue University, and he manages custom farming, and you will hear about his trials and using customized pellets for various applications. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask Terry to share his, and we'll have Terry and Ryan take it away.
All right, Terry, can you see my first slide there?
Yes, very nice.
Okay. Well, thank you. I was telling Janine earlier, I really think it's neat that we're able to share as people in this industry with everyone on the call and some of the past presentations. I think it's great that we can all learn from each other, and everybody has a lot to add. So I enjoy these webinars, and hopefully we can contribute a little bit of our part today. And as she mentioned, Ryan Zeck has been here pretty much since the beginning. He's not a brother, but he's like a brother. So he's been a very integral part in the growth of our company. And this first slide, and I'm going to try to go a little quick here. I've got several to show, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So we'll get started. This is our main headquarters in Kokomo, Indiana, that Janine mentioned she was at. In the background there, you can see some facilities that we store biosolids. There's one there and one to the left, and we have a couple thousand acres out here. So we're from Kokomo, but we're out in the country, which is nice. And this is where our main headquarters is at. This taller building here is one of our R&D facilities that we're able to kind of put the white lab coat on and just try to do new exciting things. So just a little bit of history about us, and I won't spend a lot of time on that. But in 1982, my brother Ted and myself started with one truck, and we actually raised hogs back then, and raised quite a few of them. And with that was hog manure, and we would rent barns and lots anywhere we could. And to pump the pits, we got our first truck. And there's a picture there when we were young and full of energy and didn't know a whole lot, but it's kind of how we got started. We've been blessed. God has really blessed us over the years. We're not that smart, but we currently have over 200 team members, 850 pieces of equipment, and we do work nationwide. We've done 5 projects in Alaska, and we're bidding in all 50 states. Between my brother and myself, we currently have 3 patents, 2 more are patent pending. And then I'll show you a little later a few more that we're having development. And then recently, we just helped build and assemble the first supercritical water oxidation portable biosolids unit here at Kokomo. And they are graduating out of our facility and moving to a real world plant, actually. So we're excited about that technology moving forward, especially as it relates to PFAS destruction. Just real quick then, some of the equipment we have, we got a lot of belt presses and centrifuges. This project on the right was a fun one in Dallas. We've done a couple times. I call it the McDonald's drive-through, where we had a drive-through dewatering system with 12 belt presses we got from Alpha Laval, and loading on scales, and we could load in 12 to 14 minutes. So that was really fun. And we have a portable screw press. We also worked with Alpha Laval and built, I believe, one of their first trailer mounted tower presses, which you see in the bottom here. And then on the right, they use that in some of their advertising, but that was kind of a fun project as well. And we use that in our fleet today. As far as some of the technologies, this is one that my brother designed and patented, and he's actually in Florida now. He built this facility, well, both these facilities he built. The top one is greenhouse drying. He's got a lot of traction on that. He's got a large project in Kennewick, Washington under contract that he'll be building. And we currently take the greenhouse drying. We bring in dewatered biosolids, 18-20%, solar dry it up to about 60%, and then polish it off in an oven. And he currently sells it to ranches and orange groves. The bottom picture, he is building a huge facility there. It's a maintenance facility, but it's also a pelletizing facility. So you see in the background the greenhouse system. And this is a public-private partnership with Pasco County. They've been awesome partners. Ted has a couple of patents on that, and he's ultimately going to be producing Florida Green. And this facility should be capable of producing about 500,000 bags a year. So we're really excited about that. He's currently under construction. These are just a couple pictures. You can see he's going to be storing some of the material in silos as it comes in. And then these are 3 24-inch pellet mills. And this is part of the mechanics inside that are under development now. We're really excited about that. It's going to be a lot of bags, and we hope it really does well. So as far as other technologies, we've got 2 that are patent pending. One is high pressure dewatering, which instead of going, to 20%, 22 with a belt press, or even 25 to 30 with a tower press or centrifuge, we will get it up to around 40% with mechanical pressure. Beyond that, then you about have to go thermal. The one we're really excited about is this PFAS destruction in biosolids, and it is before dewatering in a liquid form, and we've had some really exciting results on that. We're building that in our facility today. And then we have 3 others in development. Then Ryan will talk a little bit about the first one with biosolid pellet liquefaction and then precision placement that he's doing now on a 24-hour autonomous system. And then recovering some hydrogen out of the biosolids or the filtrate through green energy. And I won't go into a lot of boring details on it. And then also reducing cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins, which in drinking water is pretty important too. But today, what we're here to talk about is double drum drying and then the strategic placement of that fertilizer. And this technology converts primary biosolids to Class A fertilizer pellets, and it does it very quickly. And I'll show you a little more in detail how that happens. But we're changing the concept from biosolids from being an event-based application. As most of you know, wastewater treatment's a 24/7 operation. And for the most part, biosolids are pulled out of the system, stored in digesters or lagoons or some type of holding tank. And then some event will happen where a company like us will come in and haul it, land apply it, or maybe it goes to a landfill. But we're changing that to match up with the wastewater plant itself, where it's just a continuous flow process. So you never accumulate much on site. You just bring it in, you process it, and it's gone. So that reduces the amount of storage. You don't need digesters, and we'll talk about that a little more in detail. But double drum drying, we just recently got our patent for that. And basically you have 2 steam heated drums, and it's indirect thermal drying where you put steam inside them and then the sludge goes on the outside, and it gets you through that sticky phase like within seconds. So you don't have that normal problem with rotary dryers where you have that sticky phase. So We started out in 2018 and 19 and built a small pilot dryer. It was about $100,000 system that we built because I wanted to make all my mistakes in a small manner, and I did. But you know, that's R&D. So once we got those figured out, we built the first full-scale unit in 2020. And our company is more conservative on technology. We like to test it and test it and test it, and then test it again before we really talk about it, because we want to make sure that we know it works. So from 2020, for about 2 years, we would bring tanker load after tanker load in of sludge from different facilities, run it, process it, build data, and got to the point where we were very comfortable with it. So then just really quick, the technology, double drum dryers have been around. Typically they were used like it was how they used to make powdered baby milk. You put the liquid on top, you boil the water off, fish food that you sprinkle on a tank. But the limitation of those were that once it got very thick, it would just bridge in what we call the nip. So that nip is only 0.2 millimeters, so a couple of sheets of paper. So what we did was we looked at that technology and said, what if we could fix that nip problem and put thicker sludge on? Because there's no question it would work with liquid, but the thermal energy required, as you know, polymer is still one of the most economical ways to take a biosolid from 2 or 3% to 20%. It drops out a tremendous amount of water. But from there, you have to get into more expensive means to dry it. So we developed and patented this nip compactor, which took several iterations. But also by going with larger drums, we increase the angle of repose down in the valley or the nip. So what this nip compactor does, it basically gently feeds it down into what we call the point of no return. So once those biosolids get there, they're going down. And that allowed us to get up to 25, 30% solids. So now the economics really flip, because you drive off the water up to that point with polymer, and then from there you go through the sticky phase in seconds, and boom, you're up to 85, 90% solids, depending on what your needs were. So some of the thermal efficiencies, we get some impulse drying and flash evaporation. So, the impulse drying, as you go through the nip here, you go under pressure. So the laws of physics, you raise the pressure, you raise the boiling point. So when it comes out of the nip, you get a little bit of flash. It's really neat to see it run. You see that flash come off underneath. So you don't have to put all that thermal energy into it. The other thing that happens is inside the drum, you've got steam. So again, the laws of physics, cold biosolids on the outside, steam on the inside. You condensate inside the drum. So then you have a pipe and a pipe. So the steam pressure pushes the condensate back up this blue pipe. That goes back to the feed water tank at the boiler. So we're putting 205-degree water back to the feed water tank. That then goes to the boiler, and we have an economizer on the boiler that takes heat off of the exhaust. And we literally have the water boiling going back into the boiler. So that's really efficient. And then another thing we do is we take that exhaust coming off the boiler, which is this picture to the right, and we run it through 2 air-to-air heat exchangers. So we are blowing just hot air then back into these ribbon blenders, and those ribbon blenders recirculate through the night. And we believe we're going to be able to speed these drums up, and maybe instead of having it come off of those at 80 to 85% solids, we might be able to drop that to 65% solids and let that free thermal energy continue drying it through the night. The goal is to not have anything leave the building hotter than 190 to 200 degrees. So trying to make use of all that thermal energy that we can. This video might be a little choppy, but it's a little short. So it'll kind of show you, and then I've got a longer one at the end if we have time. But this was 20% solids when it went in. And as you can see there, that's pretty close to 85 to 90% solids. So one of the things that we're really excited about with it is you don't need digesters anymore. So this aerial map is the same on both sides of the page. The one on the left I kind of marked up. So, you know, the material comes in the headworks here where you go through your screening, and then it goes to primary treatment where all the bugs do their magic. And as you know, from there it goes to clarifiers. And out of the clarifiers, you have your WAS and your RAS. So the return sludge goes back and blends with the raw coming in. That's how you keep your food balance correct. And then the waste activated goes up to a holding tank. And this was this plant here used to have anaerobic digesters. They took the lids off and went aerobic. This tank is just completely shut down because they don't need it. This one is just a holding tank, and they literally start dewatering at midnight Sunday night, and by Thursday they are completely out of sludge. And last week's cheeseburger is next week's pellet. I mean, there's no storage, and they wouldn't even have to have this much storage if they wanted, but they already had the tank, so we just went ahead and utilized them. So the end result is you get the biosolids in, you turn it to fertilizer, and you're done. So the city that we worked with on this, city of Kokomo, is known as the city of first, and I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is the mayor here with the state of the state speech. They were very, very proactive. They came out and saw their material run. So this is just his 1 minute announcement I thought I would play.
An expanding partnership between the city of Kokomo and Merrell Brothers Incorporated, the local Biosolids Management Corporation, who has been servicing the Kokomo wastewater utility plant for years by helping to keep Kokomo's sludge, to put it nicely, out of area landfills. Merrell Brothers Incorporated has been a leader in the biosolids management industry for almost 40 years. Over the past several years, Terry Merrell and his team, some of whom are with us this evening, I think it's just Terry, have developed a process to convert this biosolid waste from our plant into a marketable Class A pelletized fertilizer that can be used in gardens, fields, and yards. Merrell Brothers have been testing this process and product out of their Florida operation, but now they're ready to launch this state-of-the-art technology right here at home. This process allows the city to avoid sending our waste to landfills and provides a more sustainable and environmentally friendly means of disposal through yet another form of economic diversification. Terry, I can't thank you and your team enough at Merrell Brothers for your hard work and service to this community as we proudly join you in launching the beginning of Kokomo Green. The city of Kokomo is blessed that you have allowed us to be a partner in your endeavor.
So the mayor was a great partner, and they've just been phenomenal to work with. I mean, they are with us every step of the way. These are some of the pictures that we're building currently. We're putting 3 dryers in there, and I can talk about these more if we have time. I want to be respectful of your time. And this is just some more. We have a robot at the end of the bagging system to bag or stack the pellets. So that's kind of a rundown. I've got more we can show later if we have time, but I want to turn it over to Ryan, and he can talk about, you know, what happens when we come off of the dryers and you have that dry, flaky, fluffy material. What do you do with it there? So Ryan, you can take away.
Yeah, appreciate the lead in. And for decades, a lot of us on this webinar have realized that biosolids are valuable. Some of the challenges that we can have are, you know, if it's in liquid form, it's Class B, you have to have the right time at the field, you have to have the farmer participation, you have to have the land app program, and weather plays a big role in all of those things. And so by being able to take this valuable resource that's organically based and turning it into a dry form, it takes some of those factors out of it. So what Terry's showing here in the video is after it comes off the double drums and it goes into a blender that we'll discuss here in a minute, it's in this dry, powdery form that cannot be land applied usefully. It's a still valuable product, and that's a Class A material. But if you take that out to a farm field or you put it in a Scotch spreader, it's probably not going to spread very well. And so if you want to play that video on the left, you can see where we've run it through the pellet mill. So we've taken the fish flake kind of material off of the double drum. We've run it through a blender. And this particular material right here you see in the picture is straight biosolids. and we can adjust the die for the diameter difference. We can adjust the cutter blade for the length difference. And so we really can tailor make the pellets based on the industry that we're shooting for. And we'll have a picture here a little bit later of some really small pellets, maybe for more of the homeowner. But that picture right there would be more on the agricultural side. We want those pellets to be a little bit larger, because if you go out there with a spreader and you're spreading this 90 feet wide, you want to have some weight to those pellets. This picture shows where we have blended some material. And so, being organically based, the biosolids have a slow breakdown. And we've seen that for years on our corn, bean, and wheat rotation here in the Midwest and through all the municipalities we're so fortunate to serve. So that means that if corn's growing out there or grass is growing, you put this fertilizer down, it may take a little bit longer for it to green up, because it has to convert from that organic to inorganic form for the crop to take it up. So we try to come up with a customized pellet based on whatever the market would call for, so that we can cover all the bases. And so this particular picture shows a pellet that we have spiked with potash, because biosolids are naturally deficient in potassium. And so this gets us a more even blend. So if a farmer or a rancher is looking for a 12-12 or a 888 material, now we can, as it comes off the double drums, it goes into the blender. We sit there and commingle that material prior to going into the pellet mill, and then it comes out as a completely homogeneous mixture then that can be spread with the pellets. So what's the next slide there, Terry? So based on whatever the market would call for, whether we're going to go to the homeowners in bags, or whether we're going to go to the ag market or citrus, there may be different marks that we're trying to shoot for. So this particular analysis that we took not very long ago was a blend where we took some material that Ted has in Florida, Ted and Blake, some Florida green material, and we added some tiger salt to it, which is sulfur. And so sulfur is becoming more and more of a component that we have to add, because as the environment's cleaned up with the emissions controls, it's just not in the environment any longer. And so, especially here in the Midwest, farmers for the last 6 or 7 years have had to purchase more sulfur to get into their crop. So our thoughts are, if we can already take this 6, 8, 1, and something else, maybe we can add sulfur to it and have a more complete blend, or maybe it's something else. The other thing I want to point out on this analysis is it has a very good carbon to nitrogen ratio for what we're doing in the Midwest. And that can vary based on what your end goal is. But here for our soils, we want to have a 15 to 20% carbon to nitrogen ratio. If you're doing compost, you would want that to be a little bit higher. So again, we can vary a lot of the inputs that we blend in with the biosolids based on what the market is calling for. So what we've tried to do, as Terry has showed with the research and development side of the building, is what does this look like in real life? And so I enjoy the agronomic side of it and the farming aspect. And so we custom made or customized a planter, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, to where we're doing a 2x2x2 placement. And so for the non-farmers out there, as the seed goes down the row, what we've tried to do then is come up with a way to put the fertilizer 2 inches to the side and 2 inches below the seed. So as that seed germinates and the roots grow down, it is right there where the fertilizer is right where the roots can take it up. And so Terry has a picture here of showing how that the fertilizer on both sides of the roots make it more efficient for the crop to uptake. We know, especially for corn and beans, corn especially, that nitrogen uptake from germination up to tasseling is very high. And so having that fertilizer placed in the right time at the right spot makes it very valuable. Can you go back one more, Terry? Slide. So you see the planter in the upper left-hand corner. On the right picture is some broadcast pellets. And so being Class A, obviously it takes the vector attraction requirement out of needing to inject or incorporate the material. And so we did a test plot with both corn and beans where we did some 2x2x2 placement with the planter, but we also broadcast some prior to planting. And then we also went in and top dressed some corn, which means when the corn was about knee high, we put the fertilizer on top to see if it would burn the crop due to the nitrogen content and what kind of results it would have. And so we've done the test plot for a couple of years and been real excited about the results, simply so that we can pass this on to the farmers and ranchers as they come along. You want to go back forward now? When Janine was out here and we give a tour, some of the spiking components that we put with that, can be anywhere from potash to sulfur. We did a reverse polymer. And so in 2023, it was a little bit drier year. And what that reverse polymer does in the pellet is as it gets rainfall, it would absorb the water. And then as the soil would dry out, then it would release the water. So for those that don't have irrigation, it's a way to water the crop as the season goes on. And so we're excited about what some of the results are. And again, just trying to have another tool in the toolbox for when we put this on the market, we can say, hey, we've tried this worked, or maybe this didn't work very well at all. So just this year, we purchased a irrigation unit, and the purpose of doing that is obviously the key for all farmers is to try to produce as much yield as they can. And so we put in field tile in some fields to get the water away when we get too much. Then there's sometimes when the crop needs more rain and Mother Nature's just not giving it. And so this is a unit that's made in Illinois that can follow an exact GPS track and lay the water right by the roots, as you can see in the bottom left-hand picture. And our objective then is to get the feel for this and understand how it works, which we're doing this year, and then ultimately take the Class A biosolids that are in the pellet form, potentially reliquefy them, because if you're already in Class A, you reliquefy it, it's not Class B at that point, put it in with the liquid, and then you have even a faster reacting nutrient laden material that you can put on the crop right down by the roots. The advantage then is, like some firms do now with Class B land application, you try to front load all your nitrogen. What we've learned over the years is if you can spoon feed your crop, similar to having a lawn and you fertilize 2 or 3 times a year, that's best, so that you don't have nitrate leaching and you don't have any runoff issues. If we can do the same thing in the Midwest or down south on the orange groves or the pastures, you can spoon feed it. That's what we're trying to do with some of this material. So if we can re-liquefy it in some way, people can even use this on irrigation systems, on golf courses, and a lot of other opportunities. What do you got next, Terry? So this is the corn plot that we put out last year. We have another one going this year. And in the top right-hand corner, Terry mentioned that R&D sometimes is about failure. If you see that green pale strip right in the middle, that was a failure on my part. I had the sprockets adjusted completely backwards, and essentially I put no nitrogen on those 4 rows with the planter, and it was very easy to see with the drone shot. And so just a picture of sometimes we learn by failing. A lot of times we learn by failing, but the rest of the crop grew well. We had a very good yield on that with very minimal biosolids put on. And so in all of what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise a better crop or have a better yard, doing it with less inputs, so we don't have any environmental issues and less runoff and less nitrate leaching. And that's the great part about the organic base of the biosolids. And so what we're trying to do ultimately then is get this in everybody's hands that wants to have it, whether it's on the ag side or whether it's on the landowner, homeowner side. And so the small pellets, is there a video on that one, Terry? We can customize again the pellet die to make very, very small pellets that are very short. And these then would be able to go into bags. You can see the Kokomo green bag. Ted and Blake have one designed for the Florida green material. Again, this can be a straight biosolids material that would be a little bit slower releasing, or if the market would call for it and we wanted to put something else with it to enhance it, to maybe have a quicker green up earlier. We have now proven that we can do that at certain blend rates. And so the assistant superintendent at Kokomo, close to us here, tried some material that came from Florida, and these were some results that she had. So I think it was 3 weeks after 2 applications of some Florida green material. And so her results were very good, and we were excited about it. And that, we believe, was part of the precursor into getting us into the Kokomo and doing a much bigger venture. And so we're really pumped up about what some of the opportunities can be as we take this next step and converting it into a Class A. And one last thing I will mention and turn it back over to Terry is we talk about CapEx and plants expanding and bigger tanks and bigger buildings. The great part about having the Class A in a pellet form is we've done bin trials where you can take this material, and if you do it in bulk, take it out to just a normal grain bin or silo that you see across the Midwest, and it stores very well. It's 85% solids, which is very similar to how all of us farmers store corn, 15% moisture. And I had a hog bin that, feed bin that I used for hogs years ago. We've done a couple years of trials on it, and it's stored perfectly, which means we can take this out of whatever municipality has it, put it in a grain bin, store it, and then it's there at the right time for the farmer. No longer do we have to have those small windows of opportunity, because you can apply this before planting, top dress it after hay harvest, a lot of different opportunities. And so really excited about potential where this Class A double drumming, pelletizing, floor green material can go. What is
Yeah,
next, Terry?
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, what Ryan was basically saying is that, you're making a fertilizer and you store it, handle it just like you would. One interesting thing about the pellets that he's found out, since they are a slow release, when you bury them with the seed like that, it just gives that breakdown all summer. And when I was a kid in high school, my dad got an award for 150 bushel the acre yield. That was a big yield. And one of Ryan's test trials last year had, I think it was 303 bushel an acre. So, it really shows you, as urban sprawl happens, the more land comes out of production, we have the capacity to raise more if we have the nutrients. And that's why we're obviously biosolids proponents. And I heard some seed salesman say once that bag of seed can grow 500 bushel an acre of corn until you open it up. And then all the perils of life come in, weather, wind, and not enough rain, all these things. So that's what Ryan's trying to do with, giving it everything it needs when it needs it. So I think we've got enough time, Denise, to show that video.
Sure, we definitely do. And there are some questions starting to come in. So
Okay, well,
folks want to continue typing up your questions in there. Let's see what you got there, Terry.
okay. This video here kind of shows the double drum in a big scale production. So I'll kind of talk over it while it's playing. So it starts out with just liquid biosolids that most everybody's familiar with. And we add polymer to it and dewater it. It can be screw press, belt press, centrifuge, any method of dewatering that you want. In this particular case, here at our facility, we had a centrifuge. So this material is going through a centrifuge. This was an Alpha Laval smaller centrifuge. And there you see the centrate down below it there. Right. Yeah, right there. You should be able to see the centrate. So then coming out of this one, this was waste activated sludge. So it dewatered, I think, 22%. And that's what it looks like coming in. And from there, then this is what goes on top of the drums. And like I said, for the city of Kokomo, they're putting 3 of these in. And we had to develop a slitter machine, which we had to, as part of the patent, we had to build it. It's a 12-foot slitter that applies this material evenly across the drum. And then that's what you see coming off. It's kind of like dead skin or fish flakes, but that was 21% solids a couple of minutes ago. And then it gets placed across the top of the drum. And then there's a little better video. These are 12-foot long drums, 42-inch diameter. And you can speed that drum
really
up. This is almost too dry. You don't want it to be drier than 90% solids, or it gets too dry to pelletize, which it's easy to make it wetter, just speed it up.
I'll interject here. One thing is, for all those watching, is technically this is Class A, and this could be spread or used as fertilizer. However, because it's so light and fluffy, there isn't a good mechanism with which to get it out there. And so that's why Terry had to take that next step and get into the pelletizing portion of it. So
this is what it looks like coming out. There's a live bottom auger system underneath that catches the flakes as they fall. It's about like styrofoam at that point. So obviously that's not very easy to handle. So, from there, we started working pretty diligently into the pelletizing, worked with different dyes, and we've got a vendor that we have an arrangement with where we can manufacture them, and we use them in the biosolids market. here it goes up into a small surge tank. And it's rotating and kind of blending in there. That's where you could spike and add potash or whatever you wanted. This is a flat die, which is a flat die and roller system you can see inside. And it's basically compressing it down in there. And as it does that, it heats it up and activates the lignin, which is the glue. And they're almost too hot to hold when they come out because they're obviously hot. And those are the small 1/8" pellets. We can do 1/4, 1/2", 3/8. And then this shaker table has a vacuum on it. So any fine particle dust is pulled down off the bottom and fed back into the surge tank and ran through again. That's how you can kind of get a cleaner pellet. And this is our R&D facility. That pellet then goes up into this cooler. And if you notice, I always tell our team I want to be able to eat off the floor. So there's no dust. Everything's contained because we have to have a clean environment. And these are the pellets coming into the cooler. This cooler's basically like a reverse grain dryer. You're just pulling cool air through it. Comes out of the bottom to another shaker table and then goes up into whatever you want to do with it at that point. You can go into a bulk truck. In this case, we had a manual bagging system when we were doing our R&D, just to kind of test out proof of concept. And everything has vacuum on it to keep the dust clean. And like I said, this is a manual bagging system. The one at Kokomo is an automatic. And then you just make your pellets and bag it. And then if you've ever come out to our facility, I know Janie was out here. This was just our first mock-up bag of pellets because we had to make sure we have the right bag so they can breathe and make sure you don't get any degradation in it. And Ryan mentioned storing it in bulk. But then we put our white lab coat on and tested all kinds of material. And this is our wall of fame for pellets. We've got sludge from all across, or biosolids from all across the U.S. We've done a lot of spiking, and one Saturday I even pelletized some hay for our old horse that didn't have any teeth, so that was kind of fun. So, but we could talk all day on that, but I'll stop there.
Yes, we definitely have some questions we need to get into now. So,
Okay.
all right, you ready? I'm gonna fire away.
Bring him up.
All right, Vin's asking, what is the bulk density of the product before and after the pelletizer? How much dust by mass is removed through the pelletizer?
Yeah, it's down. It's a really low bulk density, real fluffy when it comes out. We try to get it up, a little more denser, maybe into the 40s. And I'm going to be cautious giving a lot of numbers and data today because I'm very conservative. I can tell you ranges that we've done, but I want to make sure that I know that I know that I know. So I'll give you ranges, like on thermal use and all that stuff. But when we get Kokomo running, I will have numbers that I'm certain about. I've got R&D numbers, but I just wanted to preface that because it probably sounds like I'm trying to dodge the question, but I just don't want to give out false information.
What is the detention time and the temperature in the dryer? And what's the product outlet temperature? And or do you cool it to less than 100 degrees Fahrenheit to more safe? You kind of covered some of this, but maybe just go through that whole.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Safety question about
the pressure
temperature
in the drums is around 85 PSI, which is about 325 degrees F. The drums are an inch thick. So, it takes a couple hours to get the drums warmed up. And then once you've got them warmed up, they stay that way. So the pellets are going into 325 degree environment. And when they come out, they're 100 to 125 degrees, but as they go through the system, they start cooling. But by the time they come out of the cooler, they're supposed to be at room temperature. So then you can handle them and not have to worry about reheating. We have, I mentioned we had material boiling going back to the boiler. So we took some of that water and ran it through a air water heat exchanger and actually fed it into a screw auger that's feeding this dryer. And we were able to get the 20% solid sludge from, 65 degrees up to about 85 to 90, just to use a few of those BTUs to pre-warm it as it goes up. Obviously, the most energy is used on that last degree when you convert to a gas phase, but anything helps along the way.
And the detention time, it just seems like seconds or
Yeah, seconds.
less
I
than
mean,
seconds. Okay.
I always joke around, if I could go to the bathroom on top of it, I could hold my pellets in a matter of a couple minutes. So I've not done that though. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
you saw
our sense of humor.
yeah, but it's
Um,
that's why we like it so much, because you don't have that sticky phase. You go from 20% to, you could go to 90 if you slowed the drums down. We're trying to get it to where we only come off at 65 and use that free thermal energy then because we get more throughput.
wow. What about the steam pressure to the dryer? Did you mention the pressure?
85 PSI.
Yep. Okay, great.
80, 85. Yeah,
All right.
that's what we found to be best.
This is another question from the same person. One slide showed screen sludge bins to the right of the dryer. Are you screening the cake before the dryer or liquid sludge further upstream?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can you see my screen again?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, I didn't push share. Okay.
There you
There you
go.
go.
So I didn't talk about that, but yes, because we have to screen, we use a Huber screener and we screen it to 2 millimeters right here. Can you see the screener right there?
Yeah.
So that's a Huber screener, and it has a 2 millimeter fine screen in it. So before you dewater it, everything goes through that. So nothing bigger than, and not even a BB, because you don't want to drop rocks down in between the drums, obviously. The drums can spread apart if you did, but then you don't dry that piece. So everything goes through a 2 millimeter screener. And the thing to remember that makes this work so well is this actually ties into our PFAS one that I'm working on. When you come out of those clarifiers, you're pretty thin, 2% solids. So that works great in the screener. And it also works great for our PFAS destruction, because that technology, because this is all good and fine unless Connecticut happens and they ban biosolids. So we are working on a technology that we're going to shatter and destroy it in this liquid phase, and that works best at 1% solids. So then we don't throw the whole baby out with the bathwater, because the baby's the fertilizer, and we don't want to lose it. So, but screening is very important. You want to screen it first.
There were a couple of questions related to the stability. I think you just touched on it a little bit, Ryan, but how stable are the pellets in storage? Should they reheat? That was a common question. What about while it's stockpiled at a farm, for example? Can you just speak to those questions?
Yeah, so cooling it after it comes out of the pellet mills is critical. Otherwise, you would have some reheating. Once it's cool, it obviously stays cool. So we've had it sitting in bags for a long time. We had it in bins for 8 months. I went through a humid August, September, went through the winter. I didn't have any freeze ups, so it was extremely stable. So no issues there. Now back to one question you asked is, could you stockpile it at the farm? This stuff does break down pretty good, and so the good and bad of that is, because it breaks down in the soil, so it can become more available to the nutrients quicker. That's great. But if you were to stockpile this at a job site or at a farm, and you got an inch of rain, it would turn back to mush, because that's what it's supposed to do. And so I don't know the stockpiling at a farm without pretty quick spreading would be the result that you'd be looking for.
I don't know if you can see these pellets.
Yeah.
These have been sitting in my office for probably a year. I mean, they're still stable because they're class A, that's why the 503s, when you get it that dry, it's stable. So yeah,
Yeah, I brought
these
some
are the
home
little
with me that
companies.
smelled like cinnamon.
What's that?
I brought home a little container with me that smelled like cinnamon. I think we were
Yeah,
spiking
so
cinnamon.
while you're getting ready to the next question, one thing that we are doing is doing some blending with some peppermint. and not necessarily as much for odor control as much as it can have a vermin control. I put peppermint in our combine and tractors for years, and it keeps
Mice don't like it.
Yeah, and so I'm just trying to think ahead. Is if you put this on your yard and it detracts some of those mice and spiders and stuff, it might be a win-win on multiple levels.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. All right, we got a couple of questions from Dr. Mo that we got to get to here. Can you please touch on the evaporation efficiency, BTU per pound of the water evaporated?
Yeah, great question there. We've got a lot of data on that, and I'm going to be vague again here, but we went from 1,500 BTUs per pound to 14 to 13. The best we had was around 1,100, but I say that with caution that I have not repeated that 20 times over. So one thing that we never got data on, because right at the end, we started feeding that hot air back from the boiler, so I'm expecting it to be even better. But we're shooting for a 0.7 kilowatts to kilogram conversion. You know, 1-to-1's kind of the higher side, and so more to come on that. I'm excited about it because we literally are not going to have, hopefully, anything hotter than 200 degrees leave the building as far as the air. But you know, normal boilers exhausting 350 degrees, and we're trying to capture as much of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And is there a sweet spot for the double drying in terms of dry tons per day or the size of a facility? Or
Kokomo produces around 8,000 wet tons, around 1,700 dry tons a year. And with all of the R&D we did, it looks like about 600 dry tons a year per dryer. So they're putting 3 in. That's based on running 260 days with, you know, time for maintenance or holidays. So that's our target. We'll see how good we are in reality, but yeah, so I hope that kind of answers that.
We do think we could potentially speed the drums up and have more drying in the dryer by Terry capturing the heat and getting some secondary drying in the blender, I meant to say. And so we hope that, you know, Kokomo is growing. They have a lot of expansion coming in with some of the plants that are being built now. So we do feel like we probably have some upside to that and could probably still make it very easy with 3 drums with some secondary drying in the blenders.
that's awesome. There's a couple of questions here, Terry, regarding compliance with the 503 Class A, based on the drying percentage that you were talking about. Let me see if I can find one that kind of puts it all together. Yeah, how are you meeting Class A requirements if you're targeting 60% total solids coming out of the dryer? How are you achieving that Class A?
The 60% is just coming out of the dryer, and then it goes into the ribbon blender.
Yeah, off the drum.
Or yeah, so coming out of the double drums, it goes up into these 2 ribbon blenders. So this is a continuous batch. So all day, all night, you're feeding into one of these 700 cubic foot blenders. And then you come in the morning, you switch your daily production to the other one. And then the one that you did the last 24 hours, we've got thermostats on it, and we're doing time and temperature. And then when we're further drying it then up to probably around 80 to 85%, because we have to be at least 75, because this has had primary treatment. So, you know, it's not raw porta-john stuff. It's went through primaries. So we meet the 75% rule. We try to get up to 80, 85, just to get a little more moisture out, make it a little more stable. So these blenders here, there's rotary airlocks down here, and I think there's another, yeah, so all night long, the material was coming out of the bottom, coming through this ribbon blender, and then going back up to the top, and it's just getting recirculated all night long. And with that hot 200-degree air coming out of the heat exchanger up here, and this is the turbo blower. So we're using that hot air. We're not using gas. There's nothing being ignited or burned, but we're using the hot air from the boiler that we've recovered. And then that air goes through a bag house, and that's how we're filtering it. Coming out of the bag house, then we're 175 degrees F. That's crossing with room temperature to get it 135 F. That 135 is crossing with the boiler 350. And that's where we're in the 200 to 225 degree area, depending on how many CFMs we're moving through. And that's things we have to dial in. You know, are we going to have, you know, if we have too much hot air, then we can make the material wetter if we don't have enough. But so those are things we have to get kind of tweaked in. And this is all being done on a scales. So that's how we know if we want to spike, we know how much to add. And then it comes down here and gets pelletized.
Awesome. There's a question here from Wilford from Maine, how they need PFAS elimination in biosolids. And we're going to get Terry back to talk about that, I think, at another point. They're definitely doing some experimenting with PFAS destruction technologies. Here's a great question. What are the maintenance requirements for the drum dryer?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things
Yeah.
that drew us to it was everything's moving pretty slow. And it's kind of like a belt press, you know, you got a couple bearings on the end and the ribbon blend or the dryers just turn and there's a blower on top pulling the steam off.
Probably
And
the
the
biggest
doctor
issue.
blades, there's doctor blades on it to scrape that's kind of like on a belt press, you know, those. But as far as long-term 2-3 year maintenance, we don't anticipate there being a lot of extra stuff, but I'll tell you for sure in 2 or 3 years. Now, there's just not a lot to it, really. You know, it's just, you know, steam and a boiler. I mean, boiler, there's maintenance with that, but you know, so that would
Nothing
be
we're not familiar with, though.
yeah.
All right, I
Probably
have
the
another
biggest thing,
question. Go ahead,
biggest thing,
Brian.
Janine, would be is if something got in between the drums and it gouged it and put a big gouge in it, then you would have some issues there. But that's where the screener and the safety protocols in place would keep even a crescent wrench from dropping in between the drums.
All right. We have somebody, Emma is raising her hand to ask a question. Then I do have another one here. I'll let Emma unmute if you want to ask your question there. Let me ask Rainey's question first then. Have you found that the marketable value of the pellets offset the extra cost of the dryer and pelletizer compared to typical digested dewatered biosolids land application programs?
Yeah, when you take the fact that you don't need digesters out of the equation if you're starting with a new plant or you have to renovate, and you take that cost out of the equation, especially anaerobic where you have to maintain them, it definitely is more beneficial. If you already have a plant, you're in Indiana and land's plentiful, and you can still throw in a truck and drive 3 miles out of town, land apply it, that's still more economical in rural Indiana. And then like if you're going to a landfill, just, you know, that alone is a big liability. Kokomo used to have, they used to go to landfill, then they went with RDP and added lime to it. And that's actually where this is being put in at, and that didn't work very well at all. So it's the same answer, basically depends on your situation, where you're at in the world. But
Yes. Emma, I did unmute you if you want to ask your question directly. I'll give you a minute there, but oh, here comes the questions. Here's another question. Have you trialed digested material, and is there a difference in the final product?
yeah, we've done anaerobic, aerobic, undigested, or waste activated, and they all work well. It's I mean, at the end of the day, you're just boiling the water off. You know, it's now I will say we've done some industrial, and anything that has a lot of sugar in it, like Kool-Aid, doesn't work great because that sugar wants to bake on the drum. So I wouldn't probably run Kool-Aid on it unless you blended it with something else. But other than that, anything really organic.
All right. I think that's it for questions, although there was a lot, and I don't know where Emma went. So if she has a question, I can always follow up with you, I'm sure, Terry.
Okay.
Really, thanks to you two for joining us today. It was really interesting. And thanks to everybody else for joining us on your Friday lunch. Next month, I have invited the developer of the InnoPellet machine for drying and pelletizing sewage sludge Again, they're claiming no need for external fuel or anything else. So come back with your questions next month for that one. And if you have any ideas for things you want to lunch and learn about, let me know. I'm always looking for those ideas. So thanks again, Terry, Ryan.
Mhm.
Thanks to everyone. Have a great Friday. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you.